Hello and welcome to the Face Building Podcast, episode 38, with the amazing and lovely host, Vladi Kuna.
And Gräter. Hi, guys.
Hello again. Today's topic is about reinvention, because sometimes we hear that we need to reinvent ourselves, or that the world or the government or whoever needs to be reinvented. Yes. And what we also know, people hate to change. Like if you ask 10 random friends and say, do you like change? I would say probably 7 would say no, and 3 would say yes, 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 yes. But I doubt the 3, because we only like change where we know that something better comes out of it. But if your house burns down, if you lose your job, if you lose your relationship, if you lose something, it's a shock in the beginning, for sure. But did you realize that most of the times, if you're open to it, something even better came out of it? But if you only have one ground and your house is already built, how can you build something better with the existing house? It has to go. So sometimes life pushes us into a direction where we need to take the next step to our desired wish and dream that we have, or that we at least subconsciously send out. And usually what we spoke about in the last episode, we don't like that. But could you see the good things that Vladi shared, the little task she gave you, the 3 or 5 things where you say that's good in it? That's what we should do. And Vladi, what do you think about reinvention, about change, and about letting go of old stuff?
I love change. I'm gonna say,
Okay.
do you know what? It's funny because I remember when I was coached by Bob, he actually said it's not about the change. People don't like being changed. And that's what's usually is connected. So when we have to change something, it usually isn't the change. It's us have to change in order to create something different and new. And I love reinvention. We talked with Norman about new ways. And it's funny how, and I like how Norman started this, because so many times we actually choose to change or do something different because we're almost pushed. So something happens, there isn't circumstance in a life or a situation that we're almost forced to change. So it's not actually all of a sudden we're sitting having a beautiful cup of coffee and say, I'm going to try this a much better way. Maybe it's going to give me a different results. We're so habitual. I'm going to repeat that. We're habitual creatures, and we usually don't focus on changing something that works. And that's what's going to tie to Norman's question. What if we did the things that work in a new, different way? And realize that actually we're going to have much better results and experience much better ways. I'll give you a quick example. I mean, I have a couple of examples, but the first one I will start with is actually climbing rocks. I love it. I do it always. I just got back after a month of spending time with friends and family in Czech and Slovakia. And I have my amazing team, which I trust and love, and I really enjoy doing it with them. I wouldn't call myself a pro in terms of like understanding everything, but I find so much joy in it and I just love it. And it's not really about what you do, but who you do it with and how much fun you find in doing things. And that's what sometimes we forget. And I want you to actually remember, do you love doing what you're doing? And even the bringing a new way of things is maybe bringing new people of doing things. But we sometimes isolate ourselves so much doing things alone, and because you don't want to share the information, or people are creating successful steps and lots of people don't share them. I mean, it astounds me how people keep things to themselves because somebody else could be more successful than us, right? If we share it with someone else. So this kind of like ego part of us kicks in and says, no, you keep it to yourself and create whatever. But really, everything's so amazing when you do it with people. But my story is this. So I went a couple of days ago for my amazing climb, and my best friend, who always just kind of leads, and when I get stuck on certain points, he can always kind of tell me, look at the right, look at the left, because like he can kind of see where I am. So I always know, I can just push myself up there. But we did this new kind of like a way where I had to secure him as well. So, I had more responsibility in there. And it was a new way of thinking for me. I wanted to repeat what I remember doing things, whether I'm doing it correctly, how things happen, what would happen if we, like one of us falls, and where would we do. So all the steps, which I usually don't worry about, and then it started bringing a little bit of fear, like, oh my God, like I actually didn't realize this has to happen and that has to happen. It's a new way of thinking. I had so much fun, so much more joy, and also a little bit of fear because I had two travelers. I couldn't hear him, what he was saying. He wasn't giving me steps like, find this, find this. And what I realized, when you bring yourself to the present moment and calm yourself, regardless of whatever crazy situation it's, whether it's financial, whether it's your relationships, whether it's health, whether it's some kind of bad news or bankruptcy, whatever it is, if you can find, there is a 72-hour rule of calmness. So you completely don't give any attention and energy to whatever situation you're dealing with, and you can push it away. And you can find the new way of being. I'm going to say that, new way of being, not doing, being. Who can I be? How can I do this differently? How can I respond instead of react? How can I maybe change my approach? I found myself in this peaceful moment where I would just touch the rock and just find the spot and move and really find the joy. And it really, in a nutshell, bringing it to short, I found a new way of doing things. I've really enjoyed it. I took more responsibility, and I'm now desiring to do more, like go for more trainings and learn more, just to make sure that I can actually be more helpful to everyone. Because really, we go throughout life. This is a climb, but it's a good example. We go through a life in a business, in partnership, relationship, marriages, health, whatever it is, where we should work together. And we don't. We talk about connections and we don't connect the right way. I'm going to say that. We do. People are chasing followers and numbers and clients and the amounts, like this shiny object syndrome, where we're focusing more on numbers than quality. And it is the quality of people in life, the quality of things you do, the quality of the service you deliver, the quality of the product you offer. And bringing into new way, I wanted to mention this because what is your new way of making certain things much more enjoyable and better, and making yourself grow more? Because when you give a focus on not to yourself, but how can you actually get better so you can serve more, or you can save people, like on the climbing, how I can support people more in any area of your life. It really is every area of your life. Then your whole new self will change. And before I hand it to Norman, really, guys, I want you to focus on yourself and not others. What is it that you can do to be better and greater every day by 1%? Because if you can get better today by 1%, do the small things in the greater way. It's not about doing something massive. It's about doing small things in a really amazing way. Being a mom who gives everything to changing the diapers, the feeding the kids with the healthy food, making their life experiences greater. It's not about the flashy things. Because then in a very longer term, much longer term than just a year, you will actually see all this pays off. And you grew as the person and human so much that the change and new ways are better. But I want you to focus on maybe doing the things you're good at in a better way. And Norman's going to talk about that. Like, change the things that you're actually good at and not the things that you just want to manage.
Yes, and I would want to take one word along that you just mentioned, the quality. When you spoke about the quality, I wanna enlarge the quality and say, what's the quality that comes out of your heart? And as Vladi was rock climbing for a month, we went on a cruise for a month to give lectures and workshops. And one stop was in Iceland. And during the time we have been there, there was an active volcano. Like, we showed up, I think, on Friday or Saturday with the cruise ship. And on Wednesday, this volcano erupted. We saw an ad, or we received an email from the provider of the tour we did there. We went into a volcano, a not active one for sure. But they offered a helicopter flight to the active volcano. So we thought, wow, what a coincidence that we are here and there's an active volcano. I mean, how often can you fly with a helicopter next to an active volcano, spitting lava and all this stuff? The interesting thing was, while we were approaching the volcano, that you could see the volcano spitting fire and lava in the distance, and you could see all the burned material, like all the lava that already moved away from the volcano itself, of course, moved its way over the land. So there was a huge part just of black burned rock around this active volcano that was spitting fire and stuff like that. Pretty amazing to watch. Now this brings me back to the quality. People that are driven by the shiny objects like Vladi shared, by just making money over people, like people are not really interesting. I watched a video of Simon Sinek the other day and he said it's interesting that sometimes people are drawn to the military or to social jobs that really want to help. And if you go to corporations, it's the different things. Like in the military, people get promoted with a Medal of Honor or whatever if they sacrifice themselves for others. And in corporations, the managers often get rewarded for sacrificing the people for the good of the company. It's very interesting. Total difference. Yeah, I thought the same. I thought, oh yeah, it's true. It's true. But that's probably a different topic we can talk in another episode. Let's go back to the quality. If there is lava and fire spitting out of you from the inside, due to whatever reason, you have been hurt as a child, or you had a lack of this or of that, could be everything. And you pretend you do good things, but at the end of the day, it just pleases your inner little devil or your inner little volcano. You leave so much burned ground that you can say, of course, in 20, 30 years, something will grow on that again. Yeah, probably even after 1 or 2 years, it grows. But the question is, do you think an apple tree will grow on this former burned ground, just rocks? I don't think so. But if you would be a fountain of water, like a volcano just with pure water, with natural water, and you would spit around, I would see green fields of everything in your surrounding. And I think it grows even faster and you have more beautiful things. But again, this brings us to the point. What's your inner core? What's your drive? What's the thing that really comes out of your volcano, if it's something good or bad? Because it has an effect on your surrounding. And I realize, and probably that's just me, I'm not quite sure if you realize something similar, Vladi, that I see so many people that avoid the actual issue they have. They could create something new. They could create a new relationship, but they are totally fearful and they rather leave it as it is and distract themselves on the outside. They go out every night with friends, with family, go to the movies, go to a party here, go to another city event there. Of course, you can say, yes, it's good if you meet other people and it's a nice thing. Yes. But I think very often it's an avoidance of why don't I want to stay at home? Why am I not going with my partner to do those things? I mean, I can see there's something quite wrong. So how about you just solve that you feel home again in your own home, that you feel happy? And it could be your job, it could be relationship with friends where you realize, they are not on my frequency anymore, or they never have been, but they presented themselves in such a nice way. But there's some lava coming out of them. And I realized that after quite a while. Can you just stop that? Because just realizing it does not make it any better. Because now you are having the lava that comes out of you all the time. And what we spoke in episode 37, you focus on the darkness, you focus on the spider webs and on the spiders and the creepy stuff and the dirt that's laying around there. Question is, will you look at the light again? What Vladi shared also in episode 37, will you find the good in it? Will you see it as a next level step to say, yeah, maybe the other one was needed to push me to somewhere, that I realize something, that I see something? Because if you went through, 10 failed relationships, the only thing that was alike in every of those 10 failed relationships is you. You were the only component that was similar to each and every of those 10. So Could it be that it has something to do with you and not with the other one? And therefore, don't blame the others. Don't blame, oh, the house broke down or the job went away or whatever. Can you just look at the positive and say, okay, now how can I reinvent whatever just left my life, maybe unexpected? How can I reinvent myself? How can I change something? How can I see the light again? Because the sooner you start pouring out pure water out of your heart and not lava and fire, the sooner something very nice will grow in your surrounding, and it has nothing to do with the others. It always comes out of you. What do you think, Vladi?
I love that. This is my favorite subject to study for myself and get better to start with, and talk and coach, is we so often focus on what's wrong with others and we don't realize that it's us. You know, like if you're like Norman says, if you're that volcano, it's hardly to say that actually, can you imagine Volcano actually having the power to speak? And it's just standing there. I mean, in a Disney world, it would. And then it would start showing and telling the animals and flowers and trees around it to say, what's wrong with you? Why are you burning? Well, because actually you're burning me. You know, like blaming the things around the volcano saying to all the things, why are you getting burned? You know, just keep shining. Well, they can't keep shining because the volcano is destructive, and that's the lava coming out. And this is what we often forget. We complain about partners and business partners and health and all this stuff, but really it all starts inside us, and we don't like hearing it. We don't like taking responsibility for things that we caused, but there's so many of us. This is one of the, after gratitude, I still talk about it as the second best thing that happened to me when I transformed. And every time I transform, it really starts with taking responsibility. Responsibility for the way you think, responsibility for the way you feel, responsibility for the way you act, and really responsibility for every single result you get. And I remember 8-9 years ago almost, where I thought I need to take a responsibility for this. That's no way my fault. But what if the behavior and the negative thinking and my focus not shifting to the light, but shifting to, and I genuinely think I've been always a very positive person. But as we said, there's always a bit of darkness and light in us. It's who we feed more. I don't know if you're aware of the wolf and eagle story. My favorite story, I tell it to the kids all the time. There is this roaring wolf and the sky flying eagle. Eagle represents the goodness. Wolf represents the darkness. And it's who we feed every day. Who do we feed more? They get stronger. And make no mistake, you cannot feed them both. So you're either feeding one or you're feeding the other. So if you go back to responsibility and who are we and how we're doing things, there's so many, and this is another topic as well, but I will mention it. There's so many people who says, oh, why I'm living in this abusive, like relationship and stuff. Why are you staying in there? Because we put ourselves into that box, and almost all of us just looked at our own cage. People talk about, going back to last episode, Norman talked about the politics and people complaining, like I'm experiencing this because of the government. I'm experiencing because of the political situation, because of what's happening in the world. I mean, that's easy to say, and to a certain point, we're all responsible for it because we vote the politics. We are the ones who need to stand up to any change, right? Anything in a history, if you look at any history, it was the people who stood up to all the leaderships and the leadership was replaced that the change happened. It didn't happen any other way. So really, we're partly responsible for supporting and feeding these things. And we're also giving them energy by, so many people get upset about certain politicians. How is it possible they win? Everyone hates them, but they win because that hate energy feeds the wolf, and that's why they win. If we actually imagine having someone amazing in there, but we're not even practicing this, we're not imagining peoples and leaders as an amazing people who actually add to humanity. And that's what happens to, like Norman says, medals are given for army rescuers, like being in the mountains. I can see what people do in a mountain rescue, a lifeboat rescues, all these amazing places. And until something happens to us, when we actually have to experience how much they have to do to save our life, and we really appreciate and understand what they do, we give more money to corporations than somebody who kicks the ball. I mean, it's all wrong, really. But are those people who are placed in the places where they're rich and available to help and support all these others or corporations, are they doing something about it? Or are they using the flashy, shiny syndrome and only showing off a little bit here and a little bit there so they look as a humans? So really, it comes down to you are the captain of your ship. You choose what you do with your money, doesn't matter how much you have. You choose what you do with your partners, your relationships, your experiencing, your life, your home, your health. Anything is in your control. Number one, stop blaming others. Number two, I love this. Brian Proctor tells the story about MMFI. I'm in love with that story. Used it on kids for all past 8 years. Love when he talks about it. His father, Bob Proctor, used to tell him, because they used to move when he was small to a different place. And, it's kind of a difficult, challenging things for kids to be moved to different towns and new friends and new schools, because you're always that new person. And Bob told Brian to always, everyone he meets, to just see the letters MMFI on their forehead, which means make me feel important. I love that, because what if you practice this for a few days, 3 days, another 3 days challenge for another episode. Just meet the person and make them feel important, because really it isn't about us, but we bring everything to ourselves so many times, like, oh, I got so upset about this. What if we're put into a situation occurs where it's our test a little bit. I don't like to believe that we're tested, but really, we're not tested. But we do have this kind of measure, how much higher self or ego self we're feeding, wolf and the ego, based on what we choose to do. Because if I had $1 million and I would just be doing the stuff for myself and make Vladi shine and do everything that would help me, and I would be telling the world that I'm actually helping everyone else, but my prime focus, which the energy knows would be me anyway, I would still be feeding the wolf. It's just we lie to ourselves. I love what Norman said. We do lie ourselves. We love to create these excuse stories and justify why we're doing what we're doing. But it's not feeding the ego, and it's not really helping our higher self to grow. Because really, if it's not good on all parts, so if you're doing a business deal, you're doing a marriage deal, you're doing a kids deal, whatever, I'm going to call it a deal. If it's not beneficial on all parts, so if we're creating something and it's good for me and it's good for Norman, but it's definitely not good for our clients, it's not a good deal. So all the parts have to be benefiting from that, and then it's a good deal. But it goes to relationships, health, business, everything. So really make someone feel important. If we really grow ourselves, we have to shift the focus from us, because it's not about us really. Norman.
Yeah, many parts do not really feed our higher self, but they feed our lower self. And the lower self is always drawn and triggered to 3 points. We speak about them quite often. People want to be seen, people want to be heard, and people want to be respected. And I realized most people that want to be respected end up in prison. Because did you realize when you watch the prison documentaries, it's all about respect, and the gang members, it's all about respect. So people that aim after respect very often go to prison, because it's only about respect, not about something very smart and makes sense. It's just to have to respect for this or that. I love the concept of MMFI as well. Vladi and I talk about that very often. And I recently heard a story, and I think it goes back to Dale Carnegie, if I remember correctly, who had the first idea about the MMFI sticker. He was called the world's greatest communicator, if I remember the story correctly. And he was invited, Dale Carnegie, to a party by a lady, and she said, I have the world's greatest communicator with me on my party, and this attracts other, of course, interesting people. So Dale Carnegie showed up, and the lady was working for a newspaper, and she said, I will test if Dale Carnegie is really the world's greatest communicator. And she opened the door and said, oh, Mr. Carnegie, welcome, come in. Yes, thank you for the invitation. Now tell me, you are called the world's greatest communicator. How did this come along? Why do people say that you're the world's greatest communicator? And he smiled and said, you know, that's a very interesting story. And before I go into that, let me ask you, this art that you have hanging on your wall, this is just such an amazing picture. Where did you get it? And the lady totally lit up and started to tell him for the next 40 minutes about this piece of art that's hanging on the wall. And he nodded all the time and said, okay. So asked some questions in between. And after almost an hour, the two of them parted again, and Dale Carnegie moved on to other guests in the room. And the next day, a press article came out where the lady wrote, yesterday I had Dale Carnegie in my house. He's called the world's greatest communicator. And I have to admit, this man is for sure the world's greatest communicator. Now, if we go back into the story, what did he do? He did not communicate, but he saw or heard or respected the other person. He drew the attention away from him, like she wanted to hear his story. But if you realize that everybody's only interested in themselves, that they share their story, that they get be seen, that they are respected, if you realize that it's never about you, but if you pull it back and put the light on their face again, and you listen to them, and you hear them, and you see them or respect them, you will see that they light up like a Christmas tree. And that's why Dale Carnegie was called the world's greatest communicator. And I just love the story. It shows if you're really interested in the other person. It's again like the military people. They are more interested in the other comrade that is there, or in the person they have to rescue, like the fire brigade or the Red Cross and all those policemen. And Simon Sinek went on and he said he thought about it and thought, what is the deepest drive that those people had? And he spoke to many soldiers and he said all of them repeated the same thing. What I did for the other one would have done for me as well. And this has to do with trust. And maybe for episode 39, Vladi, we can speak about trust, because I think if we start this topic now, then we will have a long episode. So I'll hand it to you for the final statements for this episode.
I love what you said. And I'm going to end it with this, guys. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. And yet we spend more time talking than listening. I've stopped actually, the book, The Greatest Sales Chick on the Planet, but I've been in sales for a while, as well as coaching, but I can tell you one stuff. The minute I've started listening more than speaking, because this is what we see people, teachers and coaches and salespeople, and talk, even in a marriage. It's the person who observes quietly and pays attention to other people say, they are the strongest, because you feel people. You can pretty much tell where they are, where they upset. You can make the real whole story about how you can help the person if you let them talk. You guide them with the sound. But that was the biggest shift I've done. We're talking about new ways and stories and excuses. So could you maybe imply more listening and less speaking, and really give more people, like Norman said? The truth is, there isn't one person in this world who doesn't want to be seen, heard, and respected. We all have that desire. We all want to be respected by our partners, and we all want to be, but it's the right kind of respect. So remember, when Norman pointed it out, that's the key. So many people say, oh, but I'm listening to other people and I'm letting others speak, but there is a lot of polarity. So it depends from which frequency you're doing this, because it may not be the right one. And that's what we all miss. We just think of it as a one whole thing, but there's always eagle and a wolf, always higher self and lower selves. And it depends from which place you're actually allowing to people to speak and see and do things. Is it the higher self or lower self? I look forward to talking about trust because that is my core value.
I love that. Let's do that. And as a last sentence from my side, ask yourself, based on what Vladi just shared, are you really listening to the other one, or are you just waiting for them to breathe or to stop? Because that's what I realize, that people don't really listen to me anymore. They just wait until I break and then they jump in, which means they did not really follow what I said. They were just preparing in their mind what they will say as soon as I take a breath. Can you learn more? Because nobody ever taught us how to listen. Like Vladi said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. People told us how to speak, how to write, but how to listen, nobody ever taught us. Are you really listening with your full heart? And the moment the other person is done, then you can respond or start thinking about it. Yes, maybe there's a 5-second break where they just give me a second. I'm just sorting out all the things you just shared with me. It's totally okay. It's respectful. It's respectful. Trust, next episode. I look forward to that. Have a wonderful week, and we see and hear you again in episode 39 when it's all about trust. Bye-bye.
Bye.